When I got to play Far Cry 6 a couple weeks ago, I told you guys that this game has the potential to be just as good, if not better, than Far Cry 3. Of course, with a take so hot, so spicy, I had to let you guys know how I felt now. And I don't think that Far Cry 6 is as good as 3. Bruh. I was gonna spend this whole video explaining how Far Cry 6 is another sequel. You know, it's not that different from the last few games we've gotten, but then I realized that's not quite right. That's not the full story. But this game is so big and leans so far into the story that just saying this is the same old Far Cry, it's not right. Before we continue, this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. You might have heard of Raid before, but you may not know it's one of the best supported RPGs out there with new content coming nonstop. And that includes Dark Elves. You can use the QR code or links in the description to download it right now on iOS, Android, or PC. We've all seen elves before, but in Teleria there are two types. Hundreds of years ago, they split into the High Elves and the Dark Elves, and well, they've been fighting ever since. Even if the High Elves won, this is an RPG, so Raid lets you play as evil warlocks or rogue assassins. I like Foley because it looks incredibly evil and has a great skill set. You guys know I'm a single player guy, so I like to focus on things like story and combat. That's why dungeons like the Spider's Den are fun for me, because I get to bring the right allies and I have to buff everyone in order to survive waves of these spider hordes. This month, there's a ton of seasonal events made special for Halloween. You've got PvP tournaments and even fragment events that allow you to grab brand new champions, special made just for Halloween. So right now is the perfect time to jump in. Go ahead, scan the QR code, click the link in the description below to download it now. New players get this epic hero, Chinoru, for free. And in your inbox, you'll find 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and an ancient shard so you can summon a champion ASAP. Check the link in the description and download Raid Shadow Legends today. Before we go on, thanks to Ubisoft for sending me a code. Remember that weird fruit thing that people were complaining about with Halo Infinite? How the fruit doesn't look next gen enough, and this game came out 10 years ago and the fruit looked way better. I feel like those same people are the ones who are complaining about how Far Cry 6 looks. Things like the fire in this game doesn't look that great. The icons for the open world stuff reused from previous games. Some of the characters, they kind of look like Play-Doh people. And the AI in this game, kind of dumb. This is not the immersive, like, jaw-dropping experience that you get from something like Red Dead Redemption 2. But it's also not trying to be. That's an important distinction to me. In fact, I think Far Cry 6 is actually trying to be the Assassin's Creed Valhalla of the Far Cry games. I think it's fair to say that Far Cry needs to start innovating more. It needs to try harder to do something different. They need to take a few years off and carve out a new identity for this series beyond open world shooter that gets kind of crazy sometimes. But it's also fair to wonder what a sequel is supposed to do in the first place. It's almost like we expect sequels to be these new revolutionary things where developers reimagine the series that we know in order to keep things fresh and exciting. I like sequels that do a lot of the same thing and also ones that mix it up. In a lot of ways, Far Cry 6 is a Far Cry game. In fact, most of all, it is. It's in the same mold as Far Cry 3, feels just like 4, 5, and New Dawn. So that's what you should expect, because that's what you get here. However, I said this is the Valhalla of the series because this game is freaking massive. It's huge. It's so big. And if you've played a Ubisoft game lately, that shouldn't really be surprising. But it reminds me of what I didn't like about Valhalla. That game is this epic saga with a main story that takes 60 hours to finish and twice as long to do everything else. Far Cry 6, I do know that it's much, much longer than the last few games. It gives you plenty of things to do. The question for me, though, is whether you're still gonna have fun after dozens and dozens of hours. Are you going to hit that point of exhaustion where it feels like you're just trying to see what happens next in the story? You're taking shortcuts, you're fast traveling, you're trying to finish the game because you spent money on it, but it just keeps going. This was something I was worried about last month after playing Far Cry 6 early. Am I going to hit that breaking point? And I did. I hit that around 20 hours in. I looked at the map and zoomed out and I realized, oh my God, I have 2 zones that I haven't even touched yet and another that I'm only halfway through. It's not that I wasn't having fun or that I didn't have fun after that, but Far Cry 6 makes me weary for how beautiful this game is, this world, and how incredible the setting is. It falls into the soupy, samey open world rhythm that I was worried about. It loses its luster. The magic of the experience, it sort of fades away. Story missions start feeling like chores, like you're running errands. I mean, there's a lot of context for these. They even went so far as to record these little cutscenes with the characters who take like a minute to explain why you're doing what you're doing. But I was questioning like why I was even doing these things. Why am I running these errands? Like this mission, a character dies and I'm asked to go find their machete to honor them. And I met this guy just a couple hours ago. I didn't feel a connection to them at all. So it's like, why am I spending 30 minutes to do this? Another time, one character is upset with what happens during the revolution and they basically throw a fit. They run off and you have to go and cheer them up. That didn't work for me. I even felt it was side content. When you recruit Chicharron, the fighting rooster, one of the amigos, at first it felt like a charming one-off missions with a bunch of explosions, you know. It's ridiculous. It's very Far Cry. But then there was a second mission after that one, which turned into an escort, which escorts work in certain scenarios. The AI was just weird. It was spotty. It didn't work for this mission. And when a mission feels like a drag, like, come on, can we please get this over with? That's when I know a game it's just lost me. I swear, I did not go into Far Cry 6 expecting this. I mean, you can see from my demo, I thought it had serious potential. But in too many places, missions felt like they were padding the runtime on this game. Either I wasn't engaged enough or I just didn't believe in what I was doing. All right, let's talk about something that I really do like in this game, and it's the world. Yara is absolutely gorgeous. Really, since Assassin's Creed Origins, Ubisoft has kind of nailed the technical aspect of delivering a massive open world game. They're huge and they are incredible to look at most of the time. You see this every time you airdrop from a fast travel location or you fly in a plane or a helicopter. It's just special to look out over this world, over this island, the sunsets, the sunrises, even just driving around in a car. It's really pretty. There's no shortage of, oh my God, moments where the beauty of the world, it just takes over. Some of you are not gonna like this, but I fundamentally believe that Far Cry belongs in a tropical setting. I've just seen it twice now with 3 and 6. This just works for me. I'm all for mixing things up. Yara in the tropical setting, they feel like the magic sauce, right? The piece to the puzzle that makes this Far Cry engine hum. This map is divided into 5 different regions, and while they're not wildly different from one another, I never felt like I was seeing a copy-pasted environment or anything like that. The world feels real, it's organic, and I think it's definitely the best part of this game. I can't show this to you because copyright. The Cuban music that they chose for this game that plays in the radio and just kind of ambient in the environment, they went out of their way to infuse culture into this game in a way that, yeah, I really appreciate it a lot. One thing I was really impressed by in the demo was the story. For me, I love it when a Far Cry game sucks me into its narrative. Like, I really care what's happening. And Far Cry 6, it does put story first. There's tons of cutscenes, tons of dialogue. Your character talks in this game, and that was something I was really rooting for. That made me excited. But ultimately, it felt like a mixed bag for me because of the pacing and because it reminded me way too much of what I didn't like, again, about Valhalla. You go off to different corners of the map to recruit allies. The similarities there are kind of crazy, right? And while what you're doing it's for the revolution, in too many spots, it felt like what I'm doing is just not all that important. Like, the story just doesn't have the juice. It doesn't have the momentum to push me forward. It's not what I was looking for, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but I think in large part that's because it was too freaking long. Depending on how you're playing this game, you can go, I don't know, 10, 15 hours at a time without seeing Antón or Diego. That's just a mistake in my opinion. That's a big pet peeve. I felt like I lost sight of the goal in this game. I met too many characters that I completely lost track of, and while some of them are quite serious, they all blended together into that campy Far Cry routine that the series is known for. I really do like Dani. I think Dani's an awesome character, and I like the decision to let our characters speak. That's something I missed in Far Cry 5, but I just wish it came with a more deliberately paced video game. I just did not get sucked in, and that really disappointed me. Something else I was looking for was the danger, kind of the edginess. You know, I want to feel like this world is not safe. I want to be on the edge of my seat. I want to feel the sweat in my palms. I want to feel those butt-clenching moments where I barely survive by the skin of my teeth. I just didn't get that in Far Cry 6. Honestly, the whole thing feels a lot more campy than dangerous. It's more ridiculous than it is thought-provoking. It doesn't have that moment where it's like, oh shit, the stakes are real here. This is real. Dani's fighting for the revolution. I'm on board and we need to complete this mission. I was looking for that hook to get me, that connection that was going to propel this story forward. I was also looking for that open world feeling like anything could happen at any moment. And instead, this world feels like Ubisoft set up a bunch of dominoes and asked me to go knock them down. I guess that means I wasn't super convinced by the world. Like, it was very pretty to look at. Gorgeous, gorgeous. But I'm sorry to say that it doesn't feel as good as it looks. This game also has an uncomfortable familiarity about it. Not just as a sequel, but as a Ubisoft game. Everyone should know by this point that Ubisoft is in the business of making sequels, right? These games will deliver a similar experience basically until they're forced to innovate because the games aren't performing like they want them to. That's why people like to look at things like facial animations and say, this looks like a PS2 game. The gear system in this game, it's way too similar to what I've seen in Assassin's Creed. There's a point where, I don't know, things can't be too familiar. They can't all be so similar that I notice it. Unless you're Activision and you make Call of Duty games every single year, I don't think the assembly line approach to open world game design, I don't think that works. Gamers are so much more perceptive than we're given credit for. We notice little things like when the gear system is the same. I noticed that immediately, and I could not forget that it was borrowed from Assassin's Creed. This is something that isn't going to bother everyone because not everyone plays all the Ubisoft games. I get that, but it certainly bothered me. The gear system itself also doesn't make a ton of sense. I was excited that they got rid of the skill tree because I usually don't like those, but I ended up using only 1 or 2 gear sets the whole time because everything else is way too situational. I don't think it makes sense to expect players to dive into a menu to switch to a very specific piece of gear for a very specific situation. And the same can be said for ammo types. There's just not enough weapon slots to deal with every enemy type. So whenever you run into an enemy that you don't have the right bullets for, you have to open up the menu to switch to a gun with the right ammo type. In so many ways, it feels like Far Cry 6 is a new Apple product, the next iPhone. You know, ideas were shifted around to make it feel new, but they were changed for the sake of change, and some of the changes are not better. Of course, a big draw for Far Cry games that I haven't really talked about yet is the open world sandbox, right? It's the guns, the tools, the vehicles, how all of these interact together, and how you can manipulate the AI and the environment. I'm not the biggest Far Cry expert in the world, but from what I can tell, this one has just as many tools as the rest of the games. You can mix and match gear, you can kit out your backpack, bring all the fun gadgets and tools to create chaos. The gunplay's solid, the stealth and the detection, they work like a charm. This is the core of the Far Cry experience from a gameplay standpoint, and that alone is enough to keep, I don't know, a lot of people buying these games year after year. And that's something that I totally understand. I get that from an outside perspective because it's just not for me, especially when I'm asked to do it for like 60 or more hours. I don't know. I find that I struggle to make my own magic in video games. Minecraft, for example, is a game that's only as fun as long as your imagination takes over and drives the experience. You get the tools, but then you have to go ahead and make your own fun. Far Cry is that kind of sandbox game where if I think it's fun to set up an ambush by rigging an entire bridge with explosives, or if I think it's fun to max out my wanted meter and fight Castillo's special forces until I die. Yeah, I'm sure I could play this thing for a long time before I get bored, but I'm just not that kind of gamer. And it's not for lack of trying. Look, I went for all of the gear. I unlocked all the resolver weapons. I unlocked all the amigos. I used all of the gadgets. I tried all the bells and whistles, but I ended up going to my silenced sniper rifle. I ended up using Boom Boom as my amigo. I mean, look at him, he's adorable. And I ended up using the rocket launcher backpack. I tried all the Supremo backpacks, but that's the one that I used. And there's only so many times that I can silenced headshot bad guys to clear a camp before I'm just over it. That's what I mean when I say this game, it's too long. If this story was this action-packed B-movie romp where I was barreling through, crazy things were happening constantly, flying by the seat of my pants, and I don't know, I'm going toe-to-toe with the main villain, then yeah, I wouldn't need to worry about making my own fun. But the fact is, even if you beeline this story from start to finish, I found myself having to make my own fun. Whenever I say a game is too long, I get a lot of pushback in the comments. I mean, people are like, oh, you get more bang for your buck. If you don't like it, stop playing it. My favorite one is, you play too many video games. Maybe you should go outside. Imagine telling like a movie reviewer to stop watching movies. What? Video games aren't movies, but similar to movies, I think that pacing is very important for a video game because I don't treat video games like an all-you-can-eat buffet where I just keep going back for more. I treat them like a 3-course dinner. I mean, there's an appetizer, there is a main course, and then there's a dessert. Far Cry 6 is fun. I mean, moment to moment, it is fun, but it's a meal that I didn't want to finish. I got what I got out of it, and that's fine. And look, it's okay to not finish your meal, and not every dinner has to be the best food I've ever tasted. But Far Cry 6, it feels like a golden corral, man. It feels like a buffet to me. And sometimes it feels like another fast food burger that I've had way too many times before. If you like the Far Cry, chaos routine where things blow up and that speaks to you, then I think Far Cry 6 is probably the game for you. I wanted to look for the world, the story, the characters to grab me, to take me and hook me and not let me go and make up for that, to push me through to finish the game, but they just didn't. It just left me disappointed. In the end, Far Cry 6 to me turned out to be like 3 copies of Far Cry 3 duct taped together with a dash of the new Ubi formula. It just wasn't for me. And I can see myself picking this back up as like a junk food game, something I can just turn off my brain and autopilot and just blow stuff up, pew pew, do that thing. It absolutely delivers on what the series is known for based on the last few games and what expectations should be from a new Ubisoft game. But I think the execution, the framework that they chose to deliver this game in, I just disagree. Maybe Ubisoft is done making games for me. Maybe they are. That's it for this one, guys. I don't expect this to be the majority opinion. I think a lot of people are gonna find the fun and say Far Cry 6 does more of what it's known for, and having more of it's a good thing. But I'm not most people. I made a whole video about how open world games are exhausting these days, and that's just what I found in Far Cry 6. So anyways, I hope you found a unique perspective here that is a little bit different and helps you figure out how you feel about this game. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the like button. If you didn't, go ahead and dislike. And if you're not subbed to the channel and you want to see more videos from me, make sure to do that. Hit the bell. We'll have more videos on the channel pretty soon here. It's going to be a packed several months with all the new games coming out. So I hope you guys are excited. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you on the next one.